country is? Take a look at how its leaders live. Do the people in charge always wind up richer than they were before they took office? Do they live in sprawling compounds surrounded by armed guards? Does the average senator, for example, live in the same zip code as the people who vote for him? Places like Scranton, Pennsylvania? If not, you've got corruption. During his 5 decades as a public servant, Joe Biden and his family became rich, and they enriched themselves at the expense of the country they supposedly serve. How did they do that exactly? Well, we obtained thousands of documents, text messages, emails, and recorded calls that tell the story, that illustrate how America's first family really does business. This is Biden, Inc.
I'm Miranda Devine, and I'm a columnist for the New York Post. I wrote a book called Laptop from Hell.
Miranda Devine is an author and a longtime journalist. She spent years covering the Biden family's business practices.
Joe Biden prides himself on being the so-called poorest man in Congress. He's always talking about it.
Don't hold it against me that I don't own a single stock or bond. Don't hold it, I have no savings account.
You know, he talks about riding the train all the time on an Amtrak.
I know, I'm Mr. Amtrak. I've traveled over 2 million miles in Amtrak.
But he's just this sort of easygoing guy that doesn't really care about the baubles of wealth.
Everything my sister Valerie and I learned came from Scranton.
Lunch pail Joe, you know, modest Joe, middle class Joe.
I know I'm called middle class Joe. In Washington, that's not meant as a compliment.
The truth of his lifestyle is the opposite. He actually lives an incredibly privileged life. He has champagne and caviar tastes.
Those high tastes led them to Delaware's Brandywine Valley, where Biden spent most of his life living among hedge-lined mansions.
The Brandywine Valley is just one of the most beautiful parts of America. It's this bucolic scenery, wealthy people that Joe Biden always aspired to be. And so it's a very privileged part of the world, and a lot of very rich people live there in very secluded compounds, just like Joe Biden's.
In 1974, Biden purchased an estate built by the DuPont family. At the time, he made $42,500 a year.
He seemed to have an uncanny knack of getting great deals all the way along the line. I think it had 8 bedrooms, had a large ballroom, and had amazing manicured grounds with tennis courts and swimming pools and a huge garage for cars. And it was a mansion.
He sold that estate for a high price to a donor in 2006.
He sold it for a lot more than he bought it for.
Then he built a new estate on a lake a few miles away.
And again, he got an amazing deal on that. It always seems that Joe Biden's donors are always very happy to sell him blocks of land and pieces of real estate, or buy real estate from him at very generous rates.
It was all possible because of something called the Delaware Way.
It's part of this sort of chummy atmosphere in that very small and very peculiar state of Delaware, where, you know, most American corporations are headquartered because it has such an opaque corporate structure and an ability to hide things that you don't want prying eyes to see.
And I mean it sincerely, what I'm about to say.
Joe Biden, being a senator of 4 decades from Delaware, wielded a lot of power because there were a lot of big corporates that wanted favors from him. The Delaware Way, he sort of described as just a lovely, collegiate, sort of cordial way of getting business done.
How exactly did the Biden family do it? Simple question, best answered by the people who helped them do it along the way. Their business partners, like Tony Bobulinski.
My name is Tony Bobulinski, and I'm a former business partner of Hunter Biden, Jim Biden, and indirectly Joe Biden.
Tony Bobulinski made a fortune as a private investor.
He's going against Tony Bobulinski now.
Before his business career, he served as an engineer on a nuclear submarine. He also wrestled at Penn State.
I've done business all over the world, and after I got out of the military, I spent my life investing in businesses.
The Bidens recruited Bobulinski precisely because he was a successful businessman. In December 2015, Bobulinski received a WhatsApp message from a friend saying that he needed help building a Chinese joint venture involving, quote, one of the most prominent families in the United States. The goal was, quote, to build an investment firm like Goldman Sachs. Bobulinski suddenly found himself at the center of one of the Biden family's biggest schemes.
How can the Bidens afford to live the way they do, based on your experience as a former businessman?
I had extensive interaction with Hunter and Jim Biden around the world, and just my interaction and knowledge of that, I'm sure they've been doing similar things, over the prior decades, and maybe that's how they've subsidized Joe's living and stuff like that.
The project began in 2015. At the time, Joe Biden was the Vice President of the United States.
Put yourself in the position of the Chinese, if you're in Chinese intelligence or the Chinese Communist Party, and you wanted to infiltrate the United States government. Who are you going to reach out to? Were you going to reach out to one of Obama's daughters? I don't think so. You could do your own research, and I'm sure they did it, and Hunter was low-hanging fruit, and they targeted him from multiple directions, and that all culminated in the fourth quarter of 2015, while Joe was still the sitting vice president of the United States.
The first partner to approach Bobulinski was a British national called James Gillier.
James Gillier, a successful businessman in his own right, I developed a very, very close and trusting relationship with him. He basically communicated in shorthand. You notice he won't use the word Hunter, he'll use the word H. He won't call, I think he calls Joe in a couple of text messages, but he won't call it the Biden family, he'll call it the B's and stuff like that.
The three other partners came from Joe Biden's inner circle. Rob Walker, a longtime political operative close to the Biden family, Joe Biden's brother Jim, and Joe Biden's son, Hunter.
But the dominant thing that they were bringing to the table, and Hunter says it crystal clear in his own words, was the Biden family and the history of Joe's political career.
Bobulinski and his partners formed a company called Oneida Holdings. They communicated mostly over text, WhatsApp, and email.
Oneida Holdings was a Delaware LLC that I set up and our lawyer set up, and that was to formalize the agreement that we had between the partners.
Through Oneida, Bobulinski and his partners would own 50% of a company called Sino-Hawk Holdings, which Bobulinski also created. The other 50% would be owned by a Chinese official, Chairman Yi.
At that point, he was a Forbes 40 under 40. People believed he was worth tens of billions of dollars, getting awards all over the world.
Yi was a Chinese billionaire who ran CEFC. That would be the capitalist side of China's One Belt, One Road global infrastructure investment project. Chairman Yi's top aide, called Director Zhang, is a CCP official with close ties to Chinese President Xi Jinping.
There's zero chance that CFC, one of, I think, the 5 largest private companies in China at the time, would have had any interest in doing business with Jim Biden or Hunter Biden unless Joe was the sitting vice president of the United States.
Sino-Hawk was their big break. Unlike other business ventures like Burisma, the Bidens had an ownership stake in this project, and they expected to get enormously rich.
CFC was talking about deploying billions of dollars, and Hunter and Jim Biden and the Biden family expected to make hundreds of millions of dollars from this, if not billions of dollars.
Bobulinski's first encounter with Hunter Biden came in Los Angeles in June of 2017.
The first time I actually sat down with Hunter was here on the patio of the Chateau Marmont in Los Angeles, and we spent about 2 hours basically just catching up on the business, talking about how he interacted with his father and what his family thought about this.
Hunter made it very clear that his father